Good morning, my dear students. Today we are continuing with our history chapter 3 Nazism and the rise of Hitler. Students, in a previous lecture we were studied about Hitler rise to power, the destruction of democracy and the reconstruction of Germany. Now today I will explain you about the Nazi worldview, establishment of the racial state and the racial utopia. Now students, Nazi worldview or Nazi ideology. Now, the crimes that Nazis committed were linked to a system of belief and a set of practices. Now, according to this, there were no equality between people, but only a racial hierarchy. In this view, blonde, blue-eyed nomadic German Aryans were at the top, while Jews were located at the lowest rung. They came to be regarded as anti race, the arch enemies of the Aryans. All other colored people were placed in between depending upon the external features. Hitler racism borrowed from thinkers like Charles Darwin and Herbert Spencer. Darwin was a natural scientist who tried to explain the creation of plants and animals through the concept of evolution and natural selection. Herbert Spencer later added the idea of survival of the finest. According to this idea, only those species survived on the earth that could adapt themselves to changing climatic conditions. Now, we should bear in mind that Darwin never advocated human intervention in what he thought was a purely natural process of selection. However, his ideas were used by racious thinkers and politicians to justify imperial rule over conquered peoples. The Nazi argument was simple: the strongest race would survive and the weak ones would perish. The Aryan race was the finest. It had to retain its purity, became stronger, and dominate the world. Now, the other aspects of Hitler ideology related to the geo- geopolitical concept of Lebensraum, now or living space. Now, students, he believed that new territories had to be acquired for settlements. This would enhance the area of the mother country, while enabling the settlers on new land to retain an intimate link with the place of their origin. It would also enhance the material resources and power of the German nation. Hitler indeed Hitler intended to extend German boundaries by moving eastward to concentrate all Germans geographically in one place. Poland became a laboratory for this experimentation. Now, students, establishment of racial states. Now, in this, once in power, the Nazis quickly begin to implement their dream of creating an exclusive racial community of pure Germans by physically eliminating all those who were seen as undesirable in the extended empire. Nazis wanted only a society of pure and healthy nomadic Aryans. They alone were considered desirable, only they were seen as worthy of prospering and multiplying against all other who were classified as undesirable. This meant that even those Germans who were seen as impure or abnormal had no right to exist. Under the euthanasia program, Helmut Father, along with other Nazi officers, had condemned to death many Germans who were considered mentally or physically unfair. Now, students, Jews were not the only community classified as undesirable. There were others. Many gypsies and blacks living in Nazi Germany were considered as racial inferiors who threatened the biological purity of superior Aryan race. They were widely persuaded. Even Russians and Poles were considered subhuman and hence sorry, underserving of any humanity. When German occupied Poland and parts of Russia, captured civilians were forced to work as slave labor. Many of them died simply through hard work or starvation. Now, Jews remained the worst sufferer in Nazi Germany. Nazi Nazi hatred of Jews had a precursor in traditional Christian hostility towards Jews. They had been stereotyped as killers of Christ and usurers. Until medieval times, Jews were barred from owning land. They survived mainly through trade and money lending. They lived in separately marked areas called ghettos. Now, they were often persuaded through periodic organized violence and expulsion from the land. However, Hitler hatred of Jews and was based on pseudo-scientific theory of race, which held that conversion was no solution to the Jewish problem. It could be solved only through their total elimination. From 1933 to 1938, the Nazi terrorized, pauperized, and segregated the Jews, compelling them to leave the country. The next phase, 1939 to 45, aimed at concentrating them in certain areas and eventually killed them in gas chambers in Poland. Now, the racial utopia. Now, students, under the shadow of war, the Nazis proceeded to realize their murderers' racial idea. Genocide, war, and war become a two sides of the same coin. Occupied Poland was divided up. Much of northwestern Poland was annexed to Germany. Poles were forced to leave their homes and properties behind to be occupied by their ethnic Germans brought in from occupied Europe. Poles were then herded like cattle in the other parts cattle in the other parts called general government, the destination of all undesirable of the empire. Members of the Polish intelligentsia were murdered in large number in order to keep the entire people intellectually and spiritually servile. Polish children who looked like Aryans were forcibly snatched from their mothers and examined by race experts. If they passed the race test, they were raised in German families, and if not, they were deposited in the orphanages where most perished. With some of the largest ghettos and gas chambers, the the general government also served as the killing fields for the Jews. Thank you, students.